Hello and welcome to the Average Joe Conspiracy Show. My name is Adam and today I'm joined again by Mark and John. The rules are simple. During each podcast I'll invite two guests onto the show and one of the guests will bring a theory to the table and it'll be down to myself and the other guest to work out if there's something to it or if it's a load of old balderdash. So welcome back, guys.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's good to be here.
It was Burns night last time. We were talking about Nessie.
Yeah.
So, John, you still kind of hold the wooden spoon in regards to points.
Do you know, I'm genuinely going to be devastated if someone gets a lower score than I do.
I was going to say, with Mark's conspiracy today, would you be a little bit tactical? But it could be. Or are you going to just go with your heart and what you believe?
I mean, obviously, I know what he's doing, and yeah. So I'm going to go with the flow and the evidence provided against me.
Mark, I think we should just go into this because I think this is going to be an interesting conversation.
I've had a look online, and I've come across the Matrix conspiracy theory. So this is a theory that we, as human beings, are living in a simulated world. Just like the film, humans were bred by robots for power. So in that instance, humans were, their mind was in the Matrix, so you thought you were alive and living a life, but your body was in like a cell, and that was producing electricity basically for the robots to live. Basically, simulation hypothesis is that the universe is based on laws. These laws have been broken down into simple algorithms and equations which rule over our life and galaxy. Mathematical, physical, chemical, and scientific precision can be applied to almost anything of what we know in the world. There's different ways of looking at it. I've watched a few videos, and there's a video by George Smoot, who's an astrophysicist, should I say, and he's also a Nobel Prize winner, so he's not stupid. and he come across some good points. Basically, will humans produce realistic simulations? The answer is yes, because it's already being done. I mean, you can only look at the computer consoles and PC games that are out these days, and even movies that are so realistic. At a glance, you probably wouldn't even notice that it wasn't real. There's so much money to be made in it. It's constantly going forwards. So there's games, entertainment, which I said, like animated movies, interactive movies, and pornography, which is another big thing. How detailed and accurate will simulations be? So you've obviously got to factor in computation power, is a big issue, and programming. If you go back 30 years or so, and you had an Atari, this was quite a good demonstration, and you had the two bars with the little ball going across, ... Okay, and then you look at now, where you've got millions of people playing. I'll give Call of Duty a shout out. You've got 150 people in each lobby. You've got millions of people all over the world doing their own thing within a game. Okay, who's to say in 40 years' time that that's not something more realistic along the lines of like the movie Ready Player One, The Matrix, where you're so immersed that it's real, effectively. A bit like a dream. If you've ever had a dream and it felt really real, that if you didn't wake up, you probably wouldn't know the difference. He's saying by 2045, for £1,000, an MRI will be able to completely map your brain, so you can upload your brain, and that should be ready with only within a few years. That's how close they are to doing that sort of thing. So who's to say that hasn't already happened, and that you're already living that simulated life? You don't know. So there's also another TV show called Upload. Anybody that's seen that, basically, if you're have an illness or you're getting older, you can have your brain uploaded into different versions of, we'll say, the Matrix. There's different lives with different companies which provide different things for money. which is very realistic because that's probably what would happen, depending on your lifestyle and how much time you got to do and what you could buy and use your money for and how good your server would be, so your accommodation and etc. 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 I actually don't think that it couldn't be real. There's no possibility that it couldn't be real. It's going to happen.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, isn't there?
Yes, serious amounts of information.
So if you go by today's tech, in fact, it's a couple of years old, you can already buy a Ready Player One setup. You can already buy that. That exists. That is a real thing. That full hepatic feedback bodysuit, the treadmill, the multi-directional, omnidirectional treadmill, that already exists. As do, obviously, I mean, there are 8K VR headsets. I mean, they're kind of super duper expensive. They're kind of just out of prototype stage into commercial stuff, but they're big money. So realistically, for about 50,000, 60,000 US dollars, you could potentially already live in a VR world.
But you would
already.
know you are.
But you would know you are, yeah. You wouldn't be
so you're not
unaware.
You're not
now,
creating a reality, are you? You're simulating.
You're living within a simulation as opposed to creating a reality. However, if you think about what Elon Musk's doing with Neuralink at the minute, so far he's got it working in rats, and I'm sure he's had it working in pigs as well. I might be wrong with that, but I think I read that he'd had it working in pigs as well. So the whole idea behind Neuralink is that there will be an implant with wires into various different parts of your neurosystem, and he will, or the system will, be able to reprogram your neurons and your neurology so that, for instance, someone who's had a stroke can be computer assisted to be able to speak and move again. So instead of the brain firing off the electrical signals down the nervous system to like your left arm or whatever, so that you in a split second, will be able to think, want to do this, and you'll do it. Much like a kind of a much further leap forward than the prosthetics that we have today that are neurologically controlled. They were talking, his end goal for it, his current goal is to help people with disabilities, with neurological disorders and problems, but his end goal is that everybody has access to every single bit of information ever, whenever they want. So, like you see the boomers and the likes that go, oh, bloody millennials walking around with their heads in their phones all the time and they're never looking up and all that. But you won't even need that. You'll just think it. If you and I are friends, I'll just go, ads, I need to do, or can we do this for the podcast, or can we do that, or do you fancy going out for a beer, or I'll just think it, and you'll get the message, you'll get that information, and you can either reply in real time, or you can go, I'll put that in my message storage, I'll reply to that in a bit later on, and it will do it immediately. Bing, 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 all over the airwaves, everything will be done and dusted. You won't even need to have a conversation with someone.
I can imagine that'd be very awkward in social circles if you're talking something.
What?
Very hard to ignore.
Didn't turn the filter off.
Would there be like a mental out of office ping up?
Just imagine if you'd out and someone tried to rob you and be like, need to learn kung fu.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the last time I looked into any of it is we haven't still got a marker of essentially how much storage our brain has.
We don't use, we use a very small percentage.
Yeah. And I don't, you might be able to drag it up, Adam, if you're looking, but I don't know what the storage capacity of the brain is.
I do know the brain performs around 100 million billion operations per second, which the last time I checked was a pretty big number, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If someone had said in a lifetime, I would have believed that. But per second is just, again, we just can't comprehend how much that is. And you imagine if you had to build a computer to simulate, and that's just simulating one individual in that program, not millions or however long for a vast amount of time. It's just, you just can't imagine how much that is. But
okay, so a very, very quick Google search, we can hold 2.5 petabytes, retain 2.5 petabytes of data, which is huge. When you think like the latest PlayStation only came out with 1 terabyte of data, you're looking at 250,000 times more. I think that's right.
I obviously found out what you were doing. I was thinking to myself, right, I think this is obviously a very good mental exercise. And I was thinking to myself, so you would have to be unconscious, or no, you'd have to be conscious, but wake up in a separate consciousness. I got really complicated with it, where it's like, well, you'd have to be in a chamber where you could feel wind and do this and do that. You kind of mentioned it earlier. Well, what about dreams?
Yeah.
That rules out time completely, because we can have dreams in a split second and feel like it's lasted I wouldn't say a lifetime, but a long period of time. You're emotionally invested in absolutely everything from just something your brain has done.
Well, going back to what John just said, so your brain receptors receive all the information for your smell and your touch and your taste, etc. So if they can do a full map of your brain and know exactly what happens where, who's to say that they can't do that, or that they haven't done that? They could have, they might have done that already. But like I said, for all you know, we could be in like a really complex version of The Sims.
Oh, imagine that.
I've got no arrow above my head.
Yeah, no diamond.
I'd be having a shit and I'd be like, why is my pixelated? And then I started thinking along this line. So if there was the technology where you could, let's say, put people into a coma or put them into a chamber or whatever, you wouldn't just use it for gaming, would you? You'd do it for job interviews. So you'd say, right, 2 seconds. And then just sort of like put you under for a second, and for a year's worth of work, they'll be able to see in a matter of seconds, go, actually, you're off, we don't want you.
Yeah.
You'd have it for court cases, you'd have it for driving tests and flying tests, you'd have, what about a dating app? Imagine you'd have a dating app and go, right, I can live a life with that bird for a year, but it would only last a second. I want to see if I want to go down these lines or not. And then you'd be like, wow, it was the best thing in my life, or actually, no, before you've even spoken to her. Education, obviously, going back in time and imagine, you know, living a life just so you can live the few hours, last minutes of the Titanic sinking, and then just wake up like, oh right, I've got a test next week, right?
I mean, you talk about crime. Minority Report, the Tom Cruise movie, where he jumps forward in time, sees a crime that's happened. Then they get like a severity, so like they can pick out mass murderers before they commit murder. So they arrest them or incarcerate them or execute them or whatever, you know, whatever they do. It's all possible. You were talking about, you know, well, they'd have to recreate wind and everything. The second that you realise that everything that we experience is nothing more than an electrical signal, there is quite literally, like this thing is a useless sack of meat. Like it just happens to provide us with a bit of electricity and some oxygen to our CPU to make us work. So once you figure out how those bits and bobs work, and that's essentially what Elon Musk's doing with Neuralink. Like imagine that if you could upload yourself to a laptop or a computer and you could still retain your cognitive process. You know, it's not you don't suddenly just become a string of 1 and 0s that I don't believe in it, but the soul still exists. Then like that would be incredible, wouldn't it? Like if your options are either A, you're stuck locked into this body that's just keeping you alive, you have to have constant round the clock care all the time, or you can be free of that constraint and you can live within the matrix or a system whereby you can still interact freely with people, not to the extent that you would have been able to as a fully functioning, you know, non-locked in individual. But do you know what I mean? Like imagine the possibilities for that.
It's incredible.
It would be.
Oh, Stephen Hawking, for instance.
Yeah. Imagine Stephen Hawking floating around in an AI system still. His brain power and his thought process tied up with an AI. Oh, mate, that would be Judgment Day.
Some of the things that could come out of it, like you said, with people with illness, people on their deathbed, or get, you know, people when they're older, you just see your family forever. Can you imagine like a birthday party on Upload? They had like a big a virtual screen. So have a screen and that's projected into like a room with real people, and they enjoyed the day together with just interaction between the two. So
wouldn't it create a bit of a paradox? imagine you could upload your brain and your memory and absolute your personality, everything that you are, or your consciousness, onto a file, upload it into another human being or some sort of robot or whatever, and then you're still conscious enough to have a conversation with yourself. Who would you wake up as? I mean, I know there's the famous paradox question that we know as human beings, if we can live with only one half of our brain, we obviously are not going to be cognitively as, you know, as great with two, but you can live you enough that you can, you know, your own existence. So imagine there was the technology to cut your brain in half and be able to stick half your brain in one person and keep half your brain in you. Who would you wake up as? Which person would you wake up as?
You you'd definitely wake up as the same. You two people of the same, wouldn't you?
So there would be an identical copy.
Yeah.
No, because
so.
if you think about the argument for the left hand and right hand of the brain, the creative and the logical sides of the brain.
So you'd be two personalities.
So, yeah, so you might, let's say for instance you took someone like Leonardo da Vinci or the dude that cut his ear off. His name escapes me. The artist Van Gogh. Yeah. So if you took him, split him into two people, you might have the super duper artist dude over here who did everything that Van Gogh already did, and then you might have the logical, sensible bloke over here who was a banker.
Maybe that's what Van Gogh was trying to do, but missed and cut his ear off.
Yeah, got it wrong. It's really interesting because as we were talking about just before we came on, René Descartes was one of the big first thinkers of the brain in the jar type theory. Yeah. But he also is the guy that's credited with I think, therefore I am. So I know I exist because I think. So then that takes away, like for me with this, then do you still exist in a digital space because you can think for yourself? So let's say you can upload yourself to the Matrix. Do you still exist? And therefore, is everybody that's in the Matrix, do they actually exist just in thought alone?
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
So does it matter if it's an organic consciousness or an artificial consciousness? Does it equal the same? Does it?
Yeah. Because if we sit there now and we go, right, like, so a group of someone's involved in a horrific car accident or an accident. I'll take the car accident. Someone's involved in a horrific accident and are put on life support. And after a period of time, a series of doctors come to the conclusion that actually it's just machinery keeping someone alive, their brain dead. If you could transfer that individual's consciousness into, I don't know, your mobile phone or a laptop or to the Matrix, right? If you then, or someone then deleted that data, would that then be murder?
Yeah, there would be a mental amount of legalities around
like the morality, sort of thing. The morality that we'd have to face and we'd have to deal with would be crazy.
Because technically at the moment, if I walked out my house and someone smashed me around the head with a cricket bat and I had basically lost who I am and I was just basically living in a vegetative state, they still technically wouldn't be done for murder.
No.
It'd be
GBH.
It'd be GBH. So in today's measurements, no. Because we don't gauge life by our consciousness.
Yeah, you're not mortal, are you?
It means
it's mortality, isn't it?
Yeah. Trying to draw this towards the likelihood side of things, because we're talking in a lot of theoreticals at the moment, and what would if. So I've got on my notes here that based on a modified version of the original simulated argument by Nick Bostrom, he details 5 assumptions. And the first one is it possible to simulate consciousness, is what we were kind of talking about. Nobody really actually knows what consciousness actually is. As we were talking before, how far can you create an AI until it is considered conscious? And then the second assumption is technology doesn't stop anytime soon, or if it continues to progress in the rapid pace that it's progressing at the moment, it will definitely get to that point if we are not stopped or nothing sort of
There's no
gets in the
barrier.
way
There's
of our,
no
yeah. So we can continue to that state. So that means the third assumption means is advanced civilizations don't destroy themselves. Maybe the reason we look out into space right now and we don't see spaceships flying around and tubes whizzing people around like Futurama is the fact that advanced civilization gets to a point where it destroys itself. And I think in 2021 at the moment, it's not a leap of the imagination to see that. Maybe advanced civilizations get to a point where they just can't cross that threshold. They get to a point where the civilization eats itself alive. Maybe life is naturally self-destructive to a certain point. So the fourth assumption would be super advanced civilizations would want to run a simulation. It'd be very arrogant for us to even try to or we pretend to know what an advanced civilization would want, why they would want to run a simulation. It'd be a caterpillar trying to work out why I would be sat on my sofa watching Love Island. It's just so far removed that you just wouldn't be able to work it out.
Well, if someone said to you, based on what that George Smoot said, if someone said to you in 45 years' time or whatever, if you can upload your brain and that you have a chance to carry on living in a simulated environment and still interact with your family whenever you or whenever they feel like they want to interact, because it's not obviously
off the microphone like Alexa.
I can't see people not wanting to do that.
Here's a question. Would something like that, if you had the ability to upload and basically be immortal, wouldn't it cheapen life? Wouldn't it make the point in life, the point that we're going to die, will it just change the whole way that we think about life? And if I can get to a point, if I go outside and I get hit by a bus, I can just be uploaded and carry on as normal. Doesn't it cheapen and would that not mess with our fundamental understanding and our social?
I don't think so.
No,
because you're then not going to be getting in bed with your partner. You're not going to be tucking your kids in. It's not that way, but you will be able to see them. You will be able to spend some time with them, although it not how you would like in real life.
I think I can see it as as I said, for people with medical conditions, for people who, are perhaps are taken too soon, like kids, for instance. Like, really? For that side of things, I can understand why, much in the same way that some crazy cat ladies like to have their dead cats stuffed and sit on the mantelpiece. Do you know what I mean? Like taxidermy. And, whilst you're not getting Uncle Fred stuffed, you're getting Uncle Fred uploaded because it'd be nice to be able to have a chat with him about the war or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? I think you're right. I think it would cheapen life, because I think if you knew that you could be immortal, ultimately, then you wouldn't do anywhere near the risk analysis that you do every day of life. Like, if you knew that tomorrow, if you died, until that point of accident, or at least until your last upload, that would be you. Do you know what I mean? You'd go, like, people that were terrified of heights would start doing parachute jumps. You'd start taking way more risks if you knew that you would be immortal and you wouldn't die. But that isn't the Matrix, though, is it? Because if you die in the Matrix, your body dies.
As long as the technology doesn't get to such to a point where I'm an old man and then suddenly my children, grandchildren turn me into one of these. I won't say it because I know everybody who's watching, one of these will go off if I say it. But could you imagine? They'd be like, Adam, turn the lights off. It's like, I'm a human being. I can do more than turn the lights off.
That small speaker you are holding could have a small projected image of yourself.
A bit like
Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan, yeah. I think that it would have to be I don't know. I mean, obviously, I have no idea how it would work, but you'd have to upload yourself on a daily basis
to the cloud.
to the cloud.
An update.
And then on the day that you died of whatever cause, whether it was natural or whatever, that you were then released into the matrix and you could be accessible. And
that would be incredible if everything is uploaded to the cloud, and then when you die, you can be released to another area where you exist somewhere, which is kind of like heaven being uploaded to the cloud. And then suddenly heaven exists, because we're going to have to wrap this up, and we're going to have to. I could talk about this for all night. I think it's a really interesting conversation.
So there's no reason why it couldn't have happened. If it hasn't happened, there's a very definite possibility that it will, in some form. But obviously, the theory is, has it happened already, and are we already living that simulated life? Can you prove it wrong? Not really. Is it actually happening? Possibly not, or most probably not. But I don't think you could rule it out.
Genuinely, I think that of all of the conspiracy theories / sort of out there theories, that it's the highest on the scale, because there is, like, you said earlier on about the hollow moon thing. Until someone goes and drills a hole in the moon to prove either way, data suggests that actually it's not hollow. It's not hollow. It's a chunk of rock that got smashed off the planet in a meteor strike when we were a ball of lava going back billions of years. I think it would be nigh on impossible to say that this isn't 100% guaranteed. I think it's nigh on impossible to say it. Yeah, because how can you prove either way?
I don't think.
So it literally sits at 0 line.
Yeah.
But because of that, it makes it way more plausible than hollow moon theory, Nessie, Lord Lucan, any of that, because actually all of that is this. Every conspiracy theory that ever there was is this right now.
Wow, we went a lot deeper than I thought we would.
So
what score are you giving it?
We're
zero to 5.5.
I'm going to go with a flat 5 for it.
Okay.
Wow.
My view on this is that although you can't prove that it's not happening, I don't think that because you can't prove something is proof that it's happening within itself. So I have a view that you cannot disprove it, but just because you can't disprove it doesn't prove it in itself.
Yep.
A part of me, I think, is a bit of a conspiracy, because I think you just want to hold on to that Nessie wooden spoon.
Damn it.
Yeah. Average Joe season 1 loser.
Victory is mine.
Have a ceremony and everything. I can't give it any more than sort of like a 2 or something, because as much as I would think, no, of course it's impossible, which is my knee-jerk reaction, I think giving it a 2 is about, okay, I'll entertain it. I understand it. I think it's a very good brain exercise, but I physically don't feel like I live in a simulation. And the other reason is that if I score this any more than my brother's Tesla
I was just about to say,
you won't talk to me for weeks. So actually, I'll give it a 2.5. So according to the average Joe conspiracy show gauge, that would be plausible. How do you feel about that then, Mark?
Fantastic. And I would just like to say, whoever is controlling me, that I could really do with some cash.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They're going to mishear you and give you a rash now.
I've already got one.
So, again, thank you very much, guys, for coming onto the show. Really interesting conversation. Please come back another time. Bring something new to the table, and we'll hash it out. So, thank you very much.
Massive.
Thank you.
If you've liked what you've seen today, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.